Hey, welcome again to Simple Church. We are so glad you're here with us this weekend. We are in week 4 of a series that we've entitled In the Meantime. We've been talking about what do you do when you find yourself in a season of life, or what do you do when you find yourself facing a set of circumstances where there is just nothing you can do to change them? What do you do when what you're facing is just, it's bad, it's horrible, and it's just getting worse, and there are no solutions? What do you do? I mean, there may be options, but all the options are bad. No solutions, all the options are bad. There's nothing you can do to change things. There's nothing you can do to get out. What do you do? We're also looking at kind of the flip side of that. How do you keep from doing what you shouldn't do? How do you keep from doing the things that will only make whatever the situation you're in worse? You know what I mean? Because when my back's against the wall or I'm in the corner, when things are going bad and they're only getting worse, when I'm facing something where there are no solutions, there's only options and the options are all bad, I'm always tempted to run, to hide, to give up, to ignore, to get angry, to get resentful. Maybe for some of you, you're tempted to go back to an old habit or a bad habit that you've tried before, and it just makes things worse. So what do you do in these mean times, and how do you keep from doing the things that will just make stuff worse? If you missed week 1, 2, or 3, you can go back on Facebook, and I encourage you to do that and check those messages out. This weekend, I want to get personal, and I want to share with you a meantime that my family has been in for a very long time, to be really honest. As many of you know, we have 3 boys, Quinn, Connor, and Blake. Growing up, our oldest son, Quinn, it just seemed like this kid just, he always made us laugh, and it was just like he was a natural at everything he wanted to do. If he wanted to do something, all he would do is just go try, and he was never just average. He was always good or above average. Everything just came so easy. And growing up, to be really honest, he was a pretty easy kid to parent. I mean, he wasn't sick that much, and just, you know, things were pretty easy. 4 years after Quinn was born, Connor came along, our middle son. Connor just has a heart out of this world, man, and cares for people, always was working with his hands, always curious. And when Connor was a little guy, probably 3 or 4 years old, my dad was diagnosed with cancer, and he ended up passing away. And we uprooted our family and moved from where we were living in York, Pennsylvania to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And shortly after we arrived there, we noticed that Connor he started acting a little bit different. He was very anxious. There was a period of time for a couple months that he actually started losing patches of hair. They were just falling out, and we never saw him pulling his hair. We never saw any other kids pulling his hair. It got to where he wasn't sleeping well at night. He was very clingy to my wife and I. And after a few months, we thought, man, we need to go to the doctor and get Connor tested. They ran all kinds of tests, and they couldn't really find anything. And we didn't really know what to do. And we had good days and bad days, and it seemed like the good outweighed the bad. But the bad, if you're a parent, you know what I mean here, the bad were really bad. Well, Blake was born 4 years after Connor, and things with Connor had the ups and downs. When Connor got into elementary school, things began to get worse. He began to have this anxiety and what would later be diagnosed or called panic attacks. They did more tests. At one point, they thought he had maybe some form of autism. At one point, they said, we are pretty sure he's bipolar. One doctor called it childhood bipolar and said he'll grow out of it. One doctor called it severe panic disorder. Recently, someone said they thought it was maybe like a PT, a post-traumatic stress disorder. And we've been to numerous counselors, doctors, therapists, and there's been ups and there's been downs. There was a time in elementary school that things got so bad at a doctor's office that Connor would run out. He would begin to have these panic attacks where he didn't want to go do anything. He couldn't enjoy life like the other kids. He couldn't go spend the night at a friend's house. We couldn't go out to eat. There came a point where things got so bad he didn't even want to leave the house. And he couldn't go to school any longer. And we were forced to homeschool. And I can't even explain to you or put into words the pain that I felt as a dad watching my son struggle, feeling so helpless and so hopeless. For a year, my wife and I homeschooled Connor, and a lot of downs, very, very few ups. And then things got a little bit better. He was able later on to go back to school. Then he gets into middle school and he has a good year, and then the bottom drops out and things go bad. And my wife is volunteering at the school 3 and 4 and 5 days a week just so Connor can make it through the school day. She's there. And the whole time, here is this kid trying so hard and not understanding, what's going on, what's causing this, what's happening to me. Oh, why do I have these moments of panic where I can't breathe right? My breathing feels like it's going to stop. I get dizzy. I get short of breath. I can't think clearly. I feel overwhelmed. Then Connor went into high school, and he had a good year and a half of high school, and for a while, the ups were outweighing the downs, but still the down times, they were so rough. As he got into high school and approached his senior year, things were pretty good. And then Becky and I noticed our youngest son, Blake, started to have some of the same characteristics that Connor had. He started having these moments in the car where panic would just overtake him, and he would go flush, and his breathing would become shallow, and you could see the little vein in his neck just begin to pulsate, and he'd get dizzy, and he wouldn't know what to do. And Becky and I thought, here we go again. What is going on with our kids? What is this all about? It got so bad with Blake, and Blake is such a brilliant kid. School for him has been something he has to work at, but he's so good at, so intelligent. In middle school, he was taking classes that Becky and I hadn't taken in high school. We can't even help him with his homework anymore. And all of a sudden, we find the attendance starts to get slower and slower. And then it gets to where he can't even take going to school. His teachers and counselors even say, you need to pull him. He can't take it. And we find ourselves now trying to homeschool Blake. It comes to Connor's senior year, and he graduates. And now it's time to go to college. And we're looking, going, how is this going to work? I can't even begin to put into words what I have felt and what I still feel as a parent, as a dad, watching my kids fight this thing called anxiety and stress. I can't tell you how many times I've asked the question, what's happening to us? Why? God, why? Why our kids? God, what have I done wrong? Are you mad at me? Are you punishing me? For years, I've looked, and sometimes I'm still looking at other families, and they're living the life that we were supposed to live. Their kids are doing the things that my kids were supposed to do. I would think about other people and their kids and go, why can they do those things that are so simple? And those things at times for my kids are so hard. They can't go enjoy the night at a friend's house. They can't go to the lake for the weekend and have fun. They can't go on vacation. The saving grace for Connor all through middle school and high school was baseball. And the saving grace and the escape for Blake has become singing and performing. And there are times they can't even do that. Becky and I have laid awake in bed countless nights just wondering, what does their future look like? How long are they going to deal with this? Will it ever go away? I remember once trying to get on a plane to go on vacation, and Connor was having a horrible panic attack. And I had been up and down and through the gate and back out of the gate and trying to figure out, are we going to be able to do this? I remember getting to the gate for the last call. And I remember a gentleman off to my right And he said out loud where I could hear him, "Look at that guy. If that was my kid, I'd have his blank on the plane already. Maybe I should go over and teach him how to control that little brat." I can't even tell you what I felt. I can't begin to tell you the anger that began to rise up on the inside of me. Words like that, they're not easily forgotten. Wounds like that, they don't just heal up. You know how many times I thought, my boys are never going to be able to be happy. Nothing good will ever come out of what my kids are facing. I looked at my boys and all I could think of is, how can I solve this problem? How can I fix this? How can I make it go away? See, when something goes wrong, if you're anything like me, when you face problems, it's so easy to get in the problem-solving mode. We want to fix it. We want to manipulate it. We want to make things better. And inside that mode, we always ask questions like, how did this happen? Why did this happen? Whose fault is this? Who's to blame? How long is it going to last? And these are big questions, and they're personal questions. They're deep questions. I want to show you a conversation that Jesus had with a couple of his disciples who saw something that they didn't like and they didn't understand. We find it in the New Testament book of John in chapter 9. And you're going to see this question that they ask is similar to the question that you and I ask when we're in a meantime moment. And I want you to pay close attention to Jesus' response. Jesus and his disciples are walking along and they see a man who's blind. Look at what the scriptures say in John 9, verse 1. As he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned? Who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" They were basically asking Jesus, what went wrong here? Whose fault is this? Just like us, they focused on what they considered to be a problem or an issue. And for me, I want to tell you, I am so glad that Jesus' response wasn't, well, it was his parents' fault, because I've been through that. Luckily for my boys, Jesus' response didn't say it was the young man's fault. I want you to look at what Jesus said. Jesus said this, neither this man nor his parents sinned. Neither one. And then he goes on to say, this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. He was saying this happened so that in the meantime, while this is going on, God's work might be displayed in him and through him. That inside of this problem, inside of this issue, God is doing something. You guys can't see it and you don't understand it, but he's doing something. Now listen, if you know the rest of this story, and if you don't, you should read it on your own. But if you know the rest of this story, you know that Jesus ends up healing this guy. It's awesome. He restores his sight. But listen, I want to tell you something. I don't want this to confuse you today, okay? Because I don't think the point of this story is the miracle. Because if it was, where does that leave us? What do I do with this junk that my boys are facing? What do you do with the stuff you're facing? What do? Do we just pray and beg and just sit and just wait for a miracle? And if we don't get it, think we're second class? Think that God's absent or apathetic or angry? I think the point here is Jesus' answer to this tough question. What went wrong? They said, who's to blame? And Jesus says your focus is on the wrong thing, guys. You need to focus on God being displayed in the middle of this circumstance, in the middle of this meantime. It appears Scripture is saying, don't focus on the issue or the problem. Focus on what God is already doing inside of this issue, inside of what you may be calling a problem. If you're like me, when I'm in the middle of a meantime moment, all I can focus on is the problem. I get tunnel vision. That's all I can see. I want to solve it. I want to fix it, especially when it has to do with my children. In the moment, it's hard to see anything else. But sometimes when we step back, we're able to see more. When we focus on what's wrong, we lose sight of what's right. I want to say that again. When you and I focus on what's wrong, we lose sight of what's right. When we focus on what's wrong and try to fix it or try to manipulate it or try to change it, or we try to run from it or we try to numb ourselves so the pain will go away and we can escape it, what you and I feel like needs to be made right doesn't always line up with the way God feels, does it? The timing that we feel things need to be done in, it doesn't always line up with the way God does things. What I'm saying is if you keep focusing on what's wrong, you're going to miss the things that are right. You'll miss what God is up to, what he's already doing, and you remain frustrated and angry and scared. Inside of this junk that my boys have dealt with and still do to certain degrees, I have been focused more than not on the problem and trying to fix it, and I've missed a lot of the good things that have been happening along the way. It took me several years to see this, and I'm still working on it. But there has been some crazy, cool, incredible things happen inside my boys' lives while they've struggled with some stuff. Several years ago, my son Connor was approaching his junior prom, and he came to us one day, and he wanted to talk. And I knew as a dad, he was going to say, Dad, what if at prom, what if I go to prom with my date and I have one of these panic attacks, one of these moments of anxiety? What am I going to do? What am I going to say? I'm going to be so embarrassed. I don't even know what's going to happen. And I knew he was asking us, what can I do? I knew that was going to be the discussion. But I was wrong. You know what he said? He said, Dad, there's a kid at my school. He's a special needs kid. And I found out he's never been to a dance. He's never been to a homecoming. He's never been to a prom. Dad, I want to take him. He needs to experience this. Inside of what he dealt with, he was reaching out. And at first glance, Becky and I, we thought, you don't need to add anything else to your plate. But we couldn't say it. Inside of what he deals with, he reaches out to people who deal with similar things, people who are overlooked and left out. It's been absolutely incredible to watch the compassion that this young man has had. Because of my son Blake and his heart, there was a teacher, an elementary teacher, when things were just at their worst and things were going bad, that fell in love with Blake and fell in love with Blake's heart. And Blake fell in love with her. And that teacher got close to Blake and to our family. And because of the stuff that Blake went through, and because of her reaching out to him and to us, that teacher is a part of this thing called Simple Church. She may be sitting right next to you today. And there are other teachers and other staff members here. Why? Because of what God was doing through my son in the midst of a horrible meantime. This place that we're in, called Simple Church, I want to be completely and utterly honest with you this weekend. Because of a never give up, never stop attitude, because of two young men with such huge hearts for people, rather than give up 2 years ago when I found out that I was losing my job, I decided to start this place called Simple Church because of Connor and Blake. It was those two who taught me to fight. They taught me to love. They taught me to never give up and to chase my dreams. And there's still a couple things that I've dreamed of that I'm not going to give up on because of these two young men. Years ago, I would sit and wonder, will my son Connor ever be able to be totally independent? Will he be able to live at peace? What's going to happen? Earlier I said, last year it came time to graduate. Connor worked his butt off to become an incredible baseball player, an incredible leader. He had scholarship offers, and when it came time to go to school, he was faced again with this ugly fact of these panic attacks, this anxiety, this panic disorder, if you will, this chemical imbalance, whatever you want to call it. And we turned all the offers down because it just didn't seem like he was going to be able to do it. And we watched our son once again miss out and feel so bad. And I cannot explain to you in words the anger I felt, the resentment, the hurt. And over the course of the last year, I've watched this young boy turn into a young man. I've watched him start and successfully run his own business. And this worry about him being independent, this weekend, while Becky and I are in Chicago, and I'll explain why we're there in just a second, you know where Connor's at? He's back there in St. Louis. He's back there running a business. In addition to the business, he's back there working a part-time job. In addition to running the business and working another job, he's watching our house. He's alone. He's there. He's independent because he doesn't give up. The reason Becky and Blake and I are in Chicago is because one of my son Blake's only escapes during these times of anxiety and stress and panic is music. It's singing. It's theater. It's acting. Becky and I laid in bed countless nights and wondered, will he ever be able to pursue this dream? Because he would say, what if I get up in front of people and I have one of these moments of anxiety, these moments of panic? What am I going to do? And we sat and wondered, what's in Blake's future? And this weekend, the reason we're in Chicago is because my son Blake is getting ready to, in front of judges and all kinds of people, audition for the TV show, The Voice. Inside, and I apologize if you don't like this word, but inside all this crap, this pain that I don't like, that I don't understand, that rips my heart out again and again and again, I've watched my two boys that I love more than life itself. And I've learned from them how to fight, how to dream, how to live, how to love, how to never give up. And if I just keep focusing on the issue and the problem, I miss out on all the good stuff, and I refuse to miss out any longer on the good stuff. So listen, whatever it is, whatever your meantime is that you're facing, stop trying to figure out why and whose fault and who to blame. Stop looking at the problem and focus on what God may be up to right now. Hold on to the fact that there will be a day, and listen, I hold on to this fact, there will be a day where God wipes away every tear, where Connor and Blake will never, ever, ever again have a moment of anxiety, have a panic attack, have that time when everything feels like it's falling apart. I hold on to that for my boys. But in the meantime, I'm going to look for God at work every day and every minute of their life. And instead of just hoping and praying and begging for a miracle, which I continue to do, but instead of just doing that, I choose to see the incredible miracles that God has already done through my boys in the midst of a meantime. I know mean times are tough. I live it. I get it. But listen, imagine with me, if you will, what life would be like if you didn't have to try to numb the pain any longer. If you didn't have to try to escape the pain any longer. If you could stop asking, why me? Who's to blame? How long? If you could stop trying to run. If you could finally stop thinking if you should give up or not. If you could finally, in the midst of the craziness, experience some peace. Imagine what that would feel like. And listen, that doesn't have to just be something you imagine. I believe it can happen. And I believe one of the first steps toward that happening for you and for me is learning to stop focusing on the problem and start looking at what God might be up to inside of the circumstance. You finding hope and peace inside of a tough, messed up, dark, nasty time. Is it easy? No. And listen, do some of you have a story or stories that make ours look small? I'm sure you do. But I want to tell you something. Today, this weekend, I'm not talking to you as a pastor just giving a message. That's out the window. I'm talking to you as a dad. A dad who is head over heels in love with his kids. A dad in the thick of a meantime who has learned how to not give up, and who has learned how to fight, and who has learned how to live better and love better from two boys in the midst of a meantime. Listen, let's allow God to work in us and through us in these meantimes. Listen, I'm never, ever going to stop praying and asking and begging God for a miracle. I'm not. But I also refuse to miss out on the things that He's doing inside the storm. I believe with all my heart that because my boys have chosen not to give up, even when that was not an easy choice, I believe that thousands of other people are going to be helped and are going to choose not to give up. I believe that Connor and Blake having enough guts and having the character and the concern for others enough to allow me to share their story and this message, I believe people are going to be helped, and people are going to feel loved, and people are going to stop feeling alone. So listen, please don't give up. No matter how much you feel like giving up, don't give up. No matter how much you feel like you're backed into the corner, don't give up. I need you to know something. You can make it. You can make it, and you're worth it. You can be happy again, and something good can come out of this. As hard as it is, stop focusing on the problem and start realizing something. God can make beautiful things, and God does make beautiful things out of things that look so messed up. Let me pray for you. God, there are many of us that are in meantime situations. They hurt, God. It feels like life's falling apart. It feels like we'll never be happy again, that we can never experience peace. But God, those are lies. We can be happy again, and we can experience peace. And God, I pray for miraculous things. I do. I ask you for miraculous things in the lives of people who are listening to this message. But until then, or if that day never comes, God, I pray that we can see the good that you're up to in the midst of the meantime. And God, I also thank you that there will be a day where everything's made right and everything's made good. God, I thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Listen, I can't close this message without saying from the bottom of my heart, the two boys that mean the absolute world to me, Connor and Blake, thank you. Thanks for everything you've taught this guy. Thank you. I'll never give up on you. And I hope you know that your mom and I will never stop loving you. And I want to thank you for allowing us to share your story and your meantime. Thanks so much, guys. I love you.